I feel like there is something very empowering about liking what you see when you look in the mirror. We have great customers. And guess what great customers do? Refer other great customers. You know your business better than anyone else will ever know it. You'll figure it out. If you aren't getting the results you want from some and you're relying on someone else, do it yourself. 63 million Americans have considered a non-invasive aesthetic treatment in the last 24 months.
Zenoti presents Growth Diaries, the fascinating stories behind the best brands in beauty, wellness, and fitness.
Today on Growth Diaries, we are joined by a bold voice in the world of beauty and aesthetics, Nicci Levy, founder and CEO of Alchemy 43. Nicci's career started at the makeup counter and evolved through leadership roles at brands like Calvin Klein and Allergan. It was during her time at two early-stage medical startups that she saw a white space, cosmetic injectables that felt approachable, not clinical. In 2016, she launched Alchemy 43 with a $7,000 funding and a mission to turn self-care into a ritual, not a medical procedure. Since then, Alchemy 43 has grown from one studio in Los Angeles to a fast-scaling brand with a national footprint, supported by a San Francisco-based growth firm and a growing base of loyal members. The company is known for its focus on micro-treatments, a distinct brand voice, and a customer experience built on trust, consistency, and strong internal protocols. In today's conversation, we'll get into Nicci's approach to building a beauty meets clinical business, the systems she's put in place to scale with quality, and what it means to lead with both intuition and precision. Let's dive in. So welcome to Growth Diaries, Nicci.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for making the time. And I thought
Sure.
before we jump into Alchemy 43 itself, I thought it would be good to know for you to share a little bit about your background prior to that, how you built a fairly strong foundation in the beauty space.
Sure. Yeah, I've definitely always been passionate about beauty and wellness and self-care. And it started very early on for me. I was, starting as even a teenager, I used to be the friend who did everybody's makeup. And I have great memories of my parents having date night on a Saturday night and my mom getting her, putting her makeup on and getting her skincare and putting on her fragrance. And, I think from a very early age, I've been fascinated by the process of how we take care of ourselves. And then in college, I was at UC Davis in Northern California and, got a part-time job at a cosmetics counter at Macy's to try to make some extra pocket money, just something I was doing, just to make some extra money and something I enjoyed. Never really thinking it would become a career, just, sort of something I thought would be a fun college job. And I think for me, what I figured out pretty early is that I feel like there is something very empowering about liking what you see when you look in the mirror. And so if I can do something or help a person in some way to look and feel their best, whatever that means to them, they will then in turn go out and live a more fulfilled life. They will go out and, ask for the job promotion, start the company, ask the person out that they've had their eye on. So I just feel like there is a fulfillment that comes with confidence and you live a bolder, richer life. And so that I think early on was something I probably didn't have the words for it back then, but it was something that I very much attached to. And I found that as I kind of did a bunch of internships after college, thinking that I wanted to do, something else and work in other industries, I kept coming back to this feeling and ultimately stopped fighting it and said, I think this actually is my life's work. Like this is what I'll be doing my whole career in some form or another. So throughout my early 20s, I worked in corporate cosmetics and beauty, doing a number of different things from working for brands like MAC Cosmetics to startup. I was part of the startup team for CK Calvin Klein Beauty, which was a new, licensee concept that I got to really be involved with building the brand from scratch. So I think that not only, sort of tapped into my love of the beauty industry, but also this entrepreneurial venture that I got to be a part of that wasn't necessarily mine, but was incredibly, I got to be incredibly close to what it takes to start a company. And I did everything from naming the eyeshadows to researching formulas in the R&D lab to writing the education program to meeting with the retailers. So all of those things. And I just, for me, that definitely clicked in like, ultimately will do my own thing one day. I just don't know what it will be, but it will be something. So I think that was sort of some of the early indications and sort of experience that led me to where I am today. And then in 2009, I was recruited by Allergan, the maker of Botox. They were launching a product called Latisse, which grows your eyelashes, and they were specifically recruiting beauty executives because they believed there was a merchandising component in medical practices. And so, myself and a couple of my colleagues kind of made the jump from cosmetics and skincare over to medical aesthetics, and I became the Beverly Hills 90210 Botox rep, which, as you can imagine, was a very eye-opening, enlightening experience and a lot of fun. And I think that was really where I had the benefit of this background in beauty and then this sort of medical aesthetics exposure. And that's really where I saw an opportunity to start something that would sort of truly be differentiated from sort of the status quo. And I felt like while it was a very successful industry and people were, lining up to get these results, the experience really was not, not I think as customer oriented as it could have been. And so I really saw an opportunity to create a lifestyle brand that would sustain, different markets and time and be, sort of nationally and perhaps even internationally known. And really base it on not only great clinical outcomes and clinically efficacious treatments, but also great experiences,
Great.
truly great experiences.
Great.
So
So yeah, it's very nice to hear the first part, which is I think I found many successful founders share what you have, which is this passion to help people feel good and
yes,
feel confident
yes,
because you never know, you go out and do the job interview great or whatever. It's not just about looking good. And I
right.
think that's what attracts me to the industry as
Mhm.
well, in the sense that, I can't do the actual, though I've played around with trying to do the service. I realized, okay, I'll do the software and
Right,
support all of you.
right.
But it is, I think when you have a passion which is aligned with what you actually make people feel, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Very fulfilling. Very,
Interesting you said Mac. In fact, my wife
yeah.
is also a big fan of Mac
Yeah.
cosmetics and all that
I
stuff.
honestly, from a brand, it's so funny because I find it was 20 plus years ago, but I find myself referencing back to that experience working at that company at that time so often because it was talk about an iconic brand. I mean, they just built everything they did, they couldn't lose. Every single thing they put out, every single move they made, it was just like, oh my gosh, how can they do it better? They can't, and then they do it better again. It's like, it was just such an incredible thing to see and to be a part of. I also really love that they had um, sort of genuinely sincere, wanting to better the world and better society. I remember the tagline from when I worked there, which was all ages, all races, all sexes, all Mac. And I still get goosebumps when I say it. It's like, talk about a brand who really did a good job. 25 years later, still proud to have worked there and still feel so connected to their brand. So
Nice.
I would love to do something in that, even close to what they've done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. So you clearly had an amazing grounding in terms so many ways, whether it's branding,
Yeah.
the belief systems, and done entrepreneurial stuff under the CK
Yeah.
client and many
Yeah.
things. So of course it was within your right to say, okay, I'm going to go start a company. And I think you weren't one of those who just said, let's just open a store. You had to build a plan and do all
Yeah.
that. So maybe you should share a little color in terms of how did you prepare? You knew
Yeah.
you were going to start a business.
But like
Then
from an
you got
idea to,
specific, saying, in spite of your background, I would have expected you to just say, okay, let's go raise some money and get going
yeah.
because you would have a lot of credibility with people. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, it was definitely a journey, and I think plenty of us have ideas, right? Ideas occur to us all the time. We could probably all have thousands of ideas if we put our minds to it. And then taking that next step to actually bring it to reality, which well is a whole different story. And so I think for me it was like as I started working for Allergan and I started digging in and really understanding the space and understanding the industry, understanding the opportunity. I decided, I think I have something here. I think this is the thing that I want to do. And so it's just started to kind of come together. Then I started to sort of look at other industries where this type of thing was happening where people were taking something that was part of a larger experience, whether it was in fitness or hair care or skincare, and they were kind of extrapolating out one element of that and creating kind of a brand around that one thing. And so I started to really sort of take notice. Obviously while I'd had a lot of experience in the beauty industry, I was new to medical aesthetics and working for a big, huge company like Allergan that had a lot of resources. I understood there was a major regulatory component that I had to consider. And I kind of didn't know what it would take. I didn't know, could I even operate this business as a non-medical provider? Could I operate it in all states? Could I operate it internationally? So I just felt there was a lot of work to be done before I could sort of for sure decide that this was the path I was going to take. I needed to understand, could I actually scale a business like this?
The beauty, wellness, and fitness industries touch our lives like no other industry does. And every brand that has succeeded in this industry has a wonderful story behind it. We have stories that engage, stories that we can learn from, stories that inspire all of us. And I'm here to bring you these stories and introduce you to the wonderful people behind these brands. So if you're enjoying this, do press like and hit the bell icon to subscribe, so you'll be the first to know when a new episode comes in.
And so really what I did was, so I left Allergan in 2012. I had this idea already, but I also had this healthy fear about the medical regulatory environment and really understanding, hey, you know, you're not Allergan, right? I don't have Allergan resources. What would it really take? And so I had a little bit of money saved up, not a lot. I don't come from a wealthy family. I didn't have, sort of a rich uncle or dad to write me a check. So I kind of knew I'd be building this thing from scratch. And, I really had to get conviction around that. And so I spent about a year. I did a couple things. Number one, I spent about a year with a healthcare attorney setting up the business. And that was where I invested all my own money, was to really understand, how would I set up a business like this? How would I scale it? What would it look like from a, structural perspective? How would I set it up for investors to want to come in and be a part of it? So I did that quite early, right? Before I sort of had a lot of clarity around things. That was kind of my first step. And then I also went, as you mentioned earlier, and I worked for a couple of startups in the medical aesthetics space. So I really wanted to understand, I worked for a huge company in this category. What would it be like to try to start something new? What are the things that I need to be aware of? What are the pitfalls? And so I went and worked for two people that were starting businesses in the space, very closely with the founders, two very different types of businesses. But I really felt like that was key to kind of getting me to really understand what would be needed. And so I think those were the two kind of things that I did. And then during that time, the healthcare attorney I was working with had some connections at the LA Business Journal, and they were looking for interesting healthcare stories. And so he inadvertently pitched me for a story. He was like, "Oh, I'm working with this woman who's going to start this business." I didn't even have a name for the company yet. So it was just like, "Hey, I want to start this Botox business," right? And they wrote a story on it. So it was just a story about me. It was very, kind of generic story. And so, but I did have this article. And so when it came time to raise money, and that I was at the process where I was like, okay, now I sort of have a business plan. I have, sort of the regulatory understanding that I need. I have the experience that I feel like I needed. Now I need capital, and I don't have it. And how am I going to go and get it? And so I was literally, a friend of mine was going to this female entrepreneur talk in Santa Monica one evening. She invited me to go with her, and the speaker was Tony Ko, the founder of NYX Cosmetics. And I'd never met her before, but she had just sold her company to L'Oreal for $500 million. She was, incredibly captivating as a speaker, and her story was just, I could relate to it. She comes from an immigrant family, moved to America from Korea when she was, I think, 12 years old, and really built her company. I mean, out of the back of her Honda Civic, she was driving around. She told the story of driving around in her Honda Civic, dropping off lipstick samples at beauty supply stores, to where she built the company to. And I just was really fascinated by her story. She also mentioned during her talk that she was doing some angel investing, and that she had signed a non-compete with L'Oreal, so she wasn't going to start another business right away, and that she had, she was doing some investing. So I reached out to her on LinkedIn the next day, which I didn't even know you could email strangers on LinkedIn at that time. I thought it was for friends, connecting. It was more of a social thing. But my brother was in business school in France at the time, and we were talking over Skype, and he's like, "Oh, you can email her on LinkedIn." I was like, "Great, okay." So I sent her the article, the LA Business Journal article, and I said, "I have this business idea. I was, loved hearing you speak last night. Would you be willing to meet with me?" And she agreed to meet me for breakfast. Because we met a week later at the SLS hotel for breakfast. And at the end of breakfast, she said, "I'm in. How much money do we need to get this started?" So she was really my first believer and my first investor. I give her so much credit, and I'm just so grateful that she took a chance on me. And so she and then a couple other people that she knew and that I knew kind of put in small checks, and I raised enough money to get the first clinic open, which I did in Beverly Hills in my home territory, in May of 2016. And from there, it was just, the first year, lots of lessons, lots of learnings. I worked in the store every day, learned everything I needed to learn, kind of proved out enough of the business metrics to attract sort of an institutional investor, which I had my first institutional money come in 2017. And today we are 9 locations strong across 6 markets in the US.
Great, great. So that's interesting for anyone to learn from, is that this notion that even though you had all the credentials, doing all the research, spending your money, actually putting the plan together, looking into regulatory stuff, and then finally actually working with a couple of businesses
Yeah.
to put your,
Yeah.
because I do feel like when you actually work in the space, you learn a lot about
Yes.
the industry before you go.
No doubt. Yes.
That was great.
Yeah.
And so obviously you were thoughtful about your business and all that, but also I wanted to expand on, why did you call your business Alchemy 43?
Yes,
It was an
the name.
interesting name.
Yes. It is an interesting name, and it was an interesting story of how I got there. So initially, and you'll understand this in the software world, I wanted to figure out, that wasn't the original name, and I'll tell you what the original name was, but my idea initially was, I want to change and reframe the entire industry. I want to sort of recalibrate how people think about getting these treatments done and make it much more socially acceptable, make it much more almost conversational. So I took a page out of Google's book, and I thought, how people say, I'm going to Google it, right? That was never a word before Google came out. So I thought, is there a word I can create to capture getting these treatments done? That's sort of like, I'm going to go and do this, and everybody knows what that means. And so my word for that was spruce, SPROOSE, which I spelled it differently than the normal spelling. And I thought, oh, like I could imagine 2 friends sitting at lunch and saying, oh, after this, I'm going to go get spruce, or I'm going to go to spruce, I'm going to go get spruce, whatever it was. But I really felt like that was what I was going for. And when I filed the trademark, I'd already signed my lease for my first location. We were going, we're starting to do the build out. We were working on the website. And I found out I couldn't get the name approved by the trademark group, because there was a dermatology concept in San Francisco that they said was too similar. And it really wasn't. It was totally different. But, trademark doesn't care about spelling. It's just consumer confusion. So they said, nope, you can't use it. So I had to find a new name. And I was like, I become so attached to that name. I was so committed. And this was tragic news. Couldn't think of another name. I had a bunch of people helping me. I had hundreds of names on a piece of paper, and nothing was feeling right. And I came home from dinner with friends one night, and I logged into Facebook, and someone had quoted the Alchemist. They had a quote from the book The Alchemist, and I was like, alchemy. And I typed into my browser, what is the definition of alchemy? And it was a seemingly magical process of combination, creation, and transformation. And then the second definition was the study of chemistry that predated the periodic table that was concerned with changing base metals into gold. And I thought, I got goosebumps head to toe. I was like, this is it. This is my name. It has to be Alchemy, nothing else. And so I was so excited. I finally had decided that this was the name. And I was talking to one of my early investors and telling her excitedly about my new name. And she said, that's great. She's like, are there any numbers that are meaningful? Because there's a lot of brand work that's going on around numbers. And I'm like, no, like 17 is my lucky number. I don't know. I don't really have a special number. And she typed into her phone, how many muscles are in the face? And so the number 43 is the number of muscles in the face. And as you probably know, Botox, relaxes facial muscles. So that was how we got to 43.
Nice.
So yes, long-winded way of telling you the
Yeah, it's
story.
a beautiful way. And also, Alchemist is one of my most favorite books.
Oh, amazing.
When I read it, it
Love
was
that.
like very moving,
Life-changing.
life-changing awareness
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that way, what you do is for people is also that way in terms of changing how they look and feel.
Absolutely. That sort of transformative impact.
Great, great.
Yeah.
And so when you first started the business, then in terms of getting you got the money, but even getting good locations and real estate gets hard, right?
Incredibly
So
difficult.
how have you been able to get that to happen in the early days? Because many people who start early have to pick some
Yeah.
place, convince someone.
That was more challenging than I thought it was going to be. I thought, oh, you have money to spend, you have a cool idea, and people are going to want to lease you space. It was definitely not that way. And I also was very, and I'm glad I was now, but I remember at the time it was challenging. I was very specific about even exactly where I wanted to be in Beverly Hills. I knew that area very well, and I was very much trying to distance myself from the medical experience. So I wanted to be, there's sort of 2 or 3 streets in what's called the Golden Triangle, which is the Beverly Hills 90210 zip code. And there's 2 or 3 streets that are almost exclusively medical. And so you have all of the plastic surgery offices, the derm, it's all medical buildings. And I did not want to be on those streets. I wanted to be distanced from those streets. In fact, I wanted to be on retail high streets. So I wanted to be where people are consuming, food, beverages, nail services, other types of beauty services, fitness, those kinds of things. And so that really gave me a small amount of options in Beverly Hills, really only a few streets. And I was also very determined to be in Beverly Hills. I felt like there was something very important and meaningful about going to sort of starting the brand in Beverly Hills in the mecca of these treatments and that the sort of lasting impact that would have. So I was absolutely committed to it, and there was absolutely nothing available. And to your point, no one was rushing to lease me space. I wasn't an established tenant. I was a brand new founder entrepreneur with a little bit of money in the bank. So it was certainly not an easy process. And my investors, I remember, started to get impatient. They were like, "Come on, where we go? Let's go. Have you thought?" And then I remember they were suggesting other areas, saying, "How about West LA? How about Santa Monica?" And I was like, "No, no, no. I'm committed to Beverly Hills." And so nothing was happening. And I had a bunch of real estate brokers helping me. My phone was not ringing. There was not options. And so I started pounding the pavement myself. I started going in. I found the area I wanted to be, and I literally started walking into restaurants, hair salons, nail salons, and saying, "Hey, would anyone like to move out? I'd love to take over your lease. Would you?" And finally, surprisingly enough, I found somebody who was like, "Yes, I'm actually ready to retire. I have this hair salon, and if you would take over my lease, I'd be thrilled." So I found it that way. So that ended up being a great thing because it was very early. I didn't have proof of concept yet. Most retail leases are 5 to 10 years. So you're really committing for a long period of time. So this was great because it was actually 2.5 years were left on this lease. So it kind of was a great, it sort of worked out for the best in that way too, where it was like, hey, let me, not commit 5 years to this. I can try it out and see what happens. And so that's how it worked out. But it really was, I did it myself because it was not happening, fast enough. And I would say to anyone out there who's listening and thinking about this, if you aren't getting the results you want from and you're relying on someone else, do it yourself.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. I think it shows the tenacity you had in saying, I
Yeah.
can start this business no
Yeah.
matter what comes in the way.
This is happening.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I also think it's a known market, Beverly Hills, because you actually work the market.
Yes.
So, you took away a lot of risk elements by picking a known market,
Yes.
doing the research, and finding like a 2.5 year lease. That's like a awesome thing.
Yeah.
Others should
Yeah.
also explore finding someone else to do,
Yeah.
let them get a sublease kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Great, great. So when it comes to, so as you said, you were trying to make this whole service more of a lifestyle service, like you were referring to things like whether it's dry bar or,
Right.
services which you pop in, get your service, walk out, whereas the space is largely clinical in nature,
Yes.
etc. But when over time, I believe you have also introduced a concept of membership because
Yes.
people don't think of the med spa space as lending itself to membership. It's more like, hey, you sell a package and you're done.
Yeah.
But you've really been successful with your membership program. So maybe you
Yeah.
should elaborate on, did you plan this from the beginning and how has it worked and
Yeah.
why do consumers sign up for such a membership?
Yeah, I was really passionate about the membership and, being, an avid consumer myself and a self-professed beauty junkie. I'm always the first one to sign up for different memberships, as it pertains to getting my hair, nails, those types of things. Like I've always found those things to be incredibly compelling. Usually there's great value, propositions within these. And what I have found with myself is that it keeps me loyal to a brand and it really does keep me coming back. I want to enjoy the benefits that come along with that membership that I've invested in. And it really does make me, it creates behaviors that I think any business owner would want to have from clientele. So I was from the beginning very focused on how do I build a lasting and sustainable membership program, because all the services that we offer at Alchemy 43 are medically effective. We always say medically effective, minimally invasive, and repetitive or ritualistic in nature. So in order to keep enjoying the results of all of these services, you do have to keep getting them done. There's really nothing that we offer that's kind of one and done. And so because of that, membership or subscription just makes sense. And so that was definitely part of the plan from the beginning. However, getting to the right actual offering for the membership was a journey. So I think over the years we did a few different versions of membership. I remember one was like a prepay You just pay the whole amount for the year up front, and then that was like, would cover you for the year. That one was a great value, but clients had a hard time because they didn't want to pay the full amount up front. It was kind of from a lifestyle perspective, you're definitely asking people to like make a big investment. And even though the value is there, that initial investment is a hard pill to swallow for some. So we had those types of learnings along the way. And eventually we landed at the current membership program, which has really been an absolute, a huge success. I think we had to go through those different other trials to sort of get to this and figure out what our consumer really wanted. We also did a lot of surveying in the early days and did a bunch of little like small advisory board meetings. We would get, our top clients together and say, hey, what type of membership would really get you excited? I mean, I think as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, like asking your customers what they want. I mean, it sounds like a completely obvious thing to say, but it's like that is the first place you should always start. The first place you should always start is ask your customers what they want from you because they'll tell you. Usually they will tell you. And so that's really how we got to the membership program that we have today. And today we have just under 4,000 members across our 9 locations. And our member revenue, so like the amount of revenue we get from members is more than 70% of our total revenue. So they are the majority of our clients. They come more often than our regular clients. They spend more per visit than our regular clients, and they are our best brand ambassadors. They tell all their friends. They are shouting the praises. They're like the super fans of the business. And so, if I look into a crystal ball and say, what do I want the future to look like? I want to have, Alchemy 43 members be the majority of our clientele.
Growth Diaries is brought to you by Zenoti, the software trusted by over 30,000 salons, spas, med spas, and fitness studios.
Nice. So it's like you've clearly cracked a model because a lot of people don't believe memberships work in med spa, but more and more people are waking up to it. But I am a firm believer that memberships is the way to build lasting businesses which have the longevity behind them. And the fact that you're at 70%, that's very impressive, probably at the leading edge of the industry in terms of membership contribution.
Yeah.
And so, as you said, membership obviously translates into being a great marketing program itself because they are referring other people and members. And so maybe you should speak to a little bit. You picked, of course, very nice location, looks like in Beverly Hills in terms of retail and all that. How much have you had to focus on marketing and bringing new customers in, and how has that unfolded for you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like, across all of our locations, we've been very focused on location, where we are in these locations, where we are in the shopping centers or the high streets, or as the case may be, varies by location. So that there is an incumbent marketing benefit to that, and certainly some locations have performed better than others in terms of that. But yes, when you put yourself on a busy retail high street or in a busy retail shopping center where co-tenants is a huge thought, a huge part of our thought process. So thinking through, who are the neighbors? Are the neighbors in this center? Do they also have our customer? Like, so sort of like same customer that's coming to this center for different things. And a few of our shopping centers come to mind as being like a real standouts. But so certainly there is a degree of marketing in your real estate site selection with if you're putting yourself in a place where people are going to see you and you're going to be associated with other brands and services that they frequent or that they use. That's going to help you get recognition. But we have found that alone does not do the trick. I think, I remember talking to some doctors early on when I was first starting the business, and they said sort of like, how are you going to get patients? Are you just going to hang a shingle? And I was like, nope, hanging a shingle does not do it enough. And I think what we've learned over the years, and it's been almost a decade now, is it's not just one thing. There's not just one marketing approach. So you can't just say, I'm going to open in a high profile area, or you can't just say, I'm just going to do paid media and just do ads on Meta. You can't just say, I'm going to have a referral. It has to be all. And what we find, and we ask clients all the time whenever they come in, how did you hear about us, right? And we have in our Zenoti, software program, when you book an appointment, we ask you, how did you hear about us? And people will always answer, right? And they'll pick one if they're forced to pick one. But the answer really is, they heard about us in 3 or 4 ways. And so, their friend told them about us, they drove by, they saw an ad, and all of these things culminated in their decision to give us a try. So I wish I could say there was a magic bullet to how do you market a business like this. I think it's a combination.
But it's good. So I think it shows that I've seen other business also making a choice of premium locations is one thing, because that itself, the location is expensive, but
Yes.
it turns out to be a good marketing because you're getting
Yeah.
a lot of foot traffic.
Sure.
And I remember, I'm forgetting the name, but some other brand also, they said they tried to open close to a Whole Foods, like,
Right. That was their
because,
model.
yeah, the kind of thing. So if you can crack where your profile of customer goes, then that works out very well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It definitely helps.
But
Yeah.
you've also been a big believer, and you have a very rich referral program. You give $100 for referral.
Yeah.
So tell me how that has worked out for
I
you.
mean, for me, I'm so passionate about this because I truly believe the best businesses are built by word of mouth. So, yes, we have all of these sophisticated ways to acquire customers these days. But if you have a good customer, and I think about it from a customer perspective, and I think about, by the way, almost everything from a customer perspective. So I always say, I started this business because I am the customer. I started this business because I want to experience what we offer at Alchemy 43 as a customer. I wasn't happy with what my choices were to go and get these services done prior to Alchemy 43. So I was really solving a problem for myself in some ways, right? And so I think about that, and I think about sort of the idea that if somebody that I knew and trusted, whether it's a work colleague, a friend, a family member, said to me, Nicci, you've got to go try Alchemy 43. They do such a wonderful job. And the power that that has. We just talked about marketing efforts. We talked about how a customer has to discover you in 5 or 6 different ways. This takes away all of that. So to me, it's like any reservation I might have about something, if somebody that I trust says to me, I went there and I had a great experience, oh, I'm there. You don't have to do nothing. I don't need anything else. I've booked it. So to me, it's worth every penny. And I think, if I could double that, I would. If I could triple it, I would. The other thing I love that it does is we have great customers. And guess what great customers do? Refer other great customers. So it's also kind of almost a selfish, like fulfilling prophecy where we say, hey, we love you. Bring other people like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and I think given it's a service industry and when you're focused on a great customer experience, I think I've also found referrals are a very good tool. So people
Sure.
sometimes are hesitant to give a strong referral reward, but I'm glad that it's working for you.
Yeah.
And something we have also tried to advocate in Zenoti, that we've not only made it easy for the referral process in terms of people referring each other,
Sure.
but the data shows that referrals for businesses, 30% of new customers in these brands which have good referral
Yes.
programs come from
Yeah.
referrals. And you only pay when the guy shows up. Otherwise, you don't have to pay a marketing guy who wants
Exactly.
money before the
That's a
customer
very good
shows up.
point. You pay once the revenue comes in the door, which is you've already won.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
so
good
that's
point.
great.
Yeah.
And so as you've expanded, obviously you started in California, but then you've expanded into New York and Texas. And how have you gone about choosing these locations, and why New York, why Texas? And,
Yeah.
you know,
It's a combination of things. And, I think as an entrepreneur and as a founder, I always say I'm clear in the vision of what I'm trying to build. I'm somewhat flexible in how I get there. And one of the things that leaves me open to is learning a lot. And so I think, the idea at the time and the sort of idea behind, instead of, sort of launching all my locations in one market where I could sort of be there and be really hands-on, the idea about sort of launching in these other key markets. So I'm obviously based here in California. So the idea to go to New York second, right? Other side of the country, far away, a long plane flight. I don't know. I've never lived in New York. I don't know New York. Was very much I would say a bold move on my part to say, hey, we want to be a national brand. We want to be a force to be reckoned with. We don't want to be another regional med spa chain that, by the way, nothing wrong with that, but my aspirations were bigger. I wanted to become the Starbucks of the industry. I wanted to become, and so I thought, in order to really do that and to sort of make that statement firm, we have to be in these 2 key markets, and we have to have a strong presence in both. And so that was really my conviction then, and I think that that's true, and I think it served us well. But it's been an expensive lesson. It's expensive to open in markets you don't know. uh, uh, Obviously, New York itself is an expensive market to hold real estate. It's you're outside of your comfort zone with who are the customer. Is it going to be the same customer that sees us in LA? And so I think there's been a lot of learnings, but that was really the initial thought. And then Texas was sort of another really key market. And when I say key market, I'm looking at things like and one of the things that's very unique about the med spa industry is that we are customers of these big pharmaceutical companies that have, a lot of resources and spend a lot of money to understand where their end use consumer actually is and where people are actually not only buying products from them, people like me, but also where these products are being used. And so we have the ability to say to our partners at, these big pharma companies, hey, we're looking at a real estate strategy. Where should we go? And they can say, well, the most Botox is being consumed in this, and this region. Or they can say, this region is highly saturated. So you could go there, but you're going to be one of many. And so, we took that into account. We also took into account other factors. So one of the things that became clear probably the first year or two of the business was that we were actually skewing slightly younger than the typical Botox demographic. So more than 50% of our customers every single month that are new are first-time users. So we are really getting people at the beginning of their aesthetic journey. And as such, we're getting people younger. So we are definitely skewing younger on the demographic side. So, it's always a good idea to look at who the existing, users are of these services. But the fact that we were also skewing younger also gave us the opportunity to look at other brands that those people were going to maybe outside of our industry and saying, hey, where are these people living? Where are they working? And other considerations too, like, do you open locations where people live or where they work? Do you want to be conveniently located on the commute to and from work? And obviously, COVID and the pandemic has changed sort of how we think about, work and remote work. So that was a sort of different path. But in the beginning, it was like some markets make sense. You want to be where they live, and some you want to be where they work.
The beauty, wellness, and fitness industries touch our lives like no other industry does. And every brand that has succeeded in this industry has a wonderful story behind it. We have stories that engage, stories that we can learn from, stories that inspire all of us. And I'm here to bring you these stories and introduce you to the wonderful people behind these brands. So if you're enjoying this, do press like and hit the bell icon to subscribe, so you'll be the first to know when a new episode comes in. Great. So that's a good, interesting thing to use your partners and data from them, and that gives me an idea. Zenoti should also publish such data so
Yeah,
that
you
people
guys
have
have a
the
lot of
data
data
that
as
says,
well, for
hey,
sure.
where is what services
Yeah,
and
you have a ton of that data. That's
trends
right.
unfolding kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the next thing, which is the industry itself is a very fast changing industry. There's a lot of new services, trends. I go to these trade shows,
Yeah.
overwhelming number of products and services that are available, equipment. So how do you stay abreast and decide what to bring in? Because I know you're very thoughtful about your brand has to be a scalable,
Yeah.
beautiful, brand, not like a big hospital which has a
Yes, right.
sensor. So how do you make these decisions and
It's,
stay?
it candidly is difficult because there is so much innovation, and what I also find about our industry, and I think this is a good thing, right? There's a very healthy tension between sort of clinical science data driven, um, like sort of backup of these new services. Something comes to market, for example, a hot thing right now is the salmon sperm facial, which you may or may not have heard of. Everyone's talking about this, okay? And it's all over TikTok, it's all over social media. People are, the Kardashians are getting this treatment. It's like the hot thing. And then you have clinical dermatologists coming out and saying, there's no science behind this. Where's the clinical data, right? And so me as a founder of my company, I'm like, okay, well, how do I answer this? Like, on one hand, we have customers coming in showing us their TikTok and saying, hey, I want to buy this treatment. And I'm like, oh, I'd love to sell it to you. But then I'm looking at, sort of the industry and these experts and these, true, experts and teachers of these things, and they're saying there isn't any backup to this. Like, this is just so I think for me the hardest part is kind of getting through the noise of sort of things that are trending, and then kind of really getting to the heart of it and saying, okay, this may actually end up being a very meaningful treatment and something that's going to change the world, or is it just a gimmick, or is it just like a momentary trend that's going to kind of go away? And so I think for me that's the so I think what it nets out to is we're not going to be the first to do something. We're not going to bring it over before it's been studied or looked at, and we're not going to be the last either. We're going to kind of sort of wait till there's a little bit more information and then jump in, but not go in too quick and not wait too long. So I think there's like a healthy cadence around that.
And how do you stay abreast? How does one go about
Yeah.
staying what's going on in the market?
Yeah. So you mentioned conferences. I think conferences are a great way to do that. As you probably also know, there are a lot of them. And so you could, easily spend all your time and money at conferences in medical aesthetics, because they really are, I mean, there's probably one a week at this point. Someone said this to me the other day, and I totally agreed, is I think the best way to do it is to go to one big conference a year and one small conference a year. Because the big conference, you find that's when you can kind of walk the exhibitor hall and sort of just imbibe all the information. And the smaller ones are usually more a little bit more tactical around how, innovations in running your business and maybe new software, how people are using these software programs and using these new services to drive their business and things like that. So there's like discovery at the bigger conference and then learning at the smaller. And so I think that's, for our industry, I would say that's a great rule of thumb is like choose 2 a year.
So as you've scaled, being in California, of course, when you had one store, I'm sure you were pretty hands-on. You managed the processes, the customer experience closely because you are passionate about what your brand will stand for.
Sure.
But now you have stores across the country. How do you make sure your staff follows a certain standard? Your brand stands for what it means, even in New York, as it does in
Yeah.
California.
I would say it's challenging, and I would say we don't get it right 100% of the time. I would love to get it right 100% of the time, and this is something that keeps me up at night, because I am so passionate about that, and I think to have a sustainable brand, and, I referenced Starbucks earlier, it's like, you walk into any Starbucks and you order that drink is the same, right? Because they have formulas, processes, and protocols, and, that's great. With what we do, there is an element of sort of, differentiation. What your aesthetic goals might be different than somebody else's. The provider might have different tools in their tool belt that are going to get them the result differently. So there has to be a little bit of room for that flexibility. Um, it is challenging when you're not physically able to be in the spaces all the time to ensure that. But I would say that is my number one objective, is to make sure that when somebody walks into our Santa Monica clinic and let's say 6 months later, they happen to be on business in Houston, they walk into our Houston clinic, they have the exact same experience. The interaction is the same. And actually a big answer to how we do that is software. So, taking meaningful notes on each consumer and, each interaction so that if somebody says, hey, so-and-so did my Botox last time, I'm here now. I want you to do exactly what she did. Great. We can actually pull that up exactly in your file and we can see all the notes and we can see exactly what happened and we can recreate that experience for you.
Yeah.
So software is a huge helper.
So soon AI will help you there because AI is going to record
Yes.
everything that happens
And then generate
the transcripts and
Yes.
stick it in their profile. So your next person
Yeah.
has a full
Yeah.
context and
Yeah.
information, I think. So
efficiency.
that's
It's
good.
going to be great for efficiency. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of, hiring people in this industry, I guess if you're evolving services, you also have to keep training. So
Yes.
you have to have an active program around it. But is hiring an easy process in the industry?
It's not. It's really challenging because the industry is growing at such a rapid pace that there actually aren't enough skilled medical providers to support the projected growth. So I heard a statistic and use this as an approximation, but it was something like right now there are enough skilled providers to support the current market size of Botox, but fillers, we're already running short of skilled providers. And so finding providers that are, obviously experienced, skilled, have a high degree of training and experience as well as the right bedside manner, those people are in high demand. And so you're always sort of, fighting to keep them, fighting to get them, fighting, it is a hard battle. And what's also interesting, which is a good problem to have, is we have people in other types of medicine that are working in, emergency rooms, urgent care. They're dying to break into the industry. Unfortunately, the way that the academic, the rigor has been set up is it's very difficult to get trained. So if you're a nurse and you're working in an OB office and you want to become, an aesthetic provider, there isn't a clear path for you. So you either have to find someone who's willing to train you out of the goodness of their heart, which is, difficult to find. We're, very busy. Everyone's busy. Or you have to pay out of pocket for your own training. But these trainings are not it's not like you're going to Harvard Medical School for a training program like this. So the problem is you might pay out of your own pocket, take time off work and go get trained, but no one will hire you because you don't have experience. So there really is a problem in the industry. And some of the big, I'm on the advisory boards for a lot of these pharmaceutical companies that make these products. And a lot of the conversations are around how do we solve this problem? Because it's a problem that affects all of us and it affects the industry's growth. So some of them are taking steps, like Allergan just launched an AMI training program. They're actually opening physical locations across the country where providers can go and get this training from them. And then they're talking about how does that translate into job training and finding them, actually landing them a job after they've gotten this training. So I think these conversations are happening, but I think the people that are going to win in this space are the people that figure out truly how to train people from scratch
Yeah.
and sort of build their funnel.
So how does given this challenge, how does retention work for you? I mean, of course, I don't know, you've been thoughtful about your brand, what it stands for, all this, but does that help? How does retention work for you?
Retention of employees?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I think people are, I think, and we've had, many, I'm very proud. We've had many, people that have been with us for many, many years. And, I love to see people evolve in their careers with us and stay with us for a long time. And that's something that, I feel personally very, motivated by and, really keeps me kind of wanting to stay on top of my game in that way and keep them really engaged. So yeah, I think part of it is the brand. They're excited about the brand. They're excited about working for a female founder who's kind of self-made. I think there's definitely an element of that. But beyond that, I hope and think that, I try to be very transparent about what we're doing as a company. I am incredibly grateful. I still, it's like I've been at this now a decade. I'm still pinching myself that people actually want to come work for me and like believe in me enough to like quit their other job and come here. I find it incredibly, humbling that people are doing that. And I try to share that and be very open about the gratitude I have around that. I also am not a medical provider. And so I have great respect for the work that they do, great respect for the training. And so I hope those things, keep them engaged. I also am very committed to, you mentioned earlier, there's new products and services. I think they love to be at the cutting edge of like what's new. They want to be trained. They want to learn new things. And so we try to really do that. Yeah.
And I think that's a good tip, like in the sense when we start a business, having gratitude for the people who come and join you. Because when I started Zenoti as well,
Yeah.
there's like all these people want to come work with me. And I'm like, okay, this is also an accountability for me
Yeah.
now. I have to
It's a
make sure it's
responsibility,
worth their
yeah.
time and,
Yeah.
and all that. So I think having that approach and demeanor keeps people wanting to work with you
Yeah,
on an
I hope
ongoing
so. Yeah.
basis. Great. So obviously, you built this business with a full intention of a broader plan, right? In
Yep.
terms of, it wasn't just about opening 3 stores in
Right.
California and saying, okay, good income, I'm happy with my life here,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But so where do you see Alchemy 43 going in the next 5, 10 years?
Yeah, well, I'm really excited about the growth that we've had, and I think, we have grown, relative to our competitors. I think we've grown relatively quickly, and it's still sort of like sort of I have to pinch myself to say I have 9 clinics. But I think also, somewhat conservatively, there have definitely been people that have raised more money and grown faster. And so I would say, I don't envy some of those people right now because I think we're in a time where we're sort of seeing this leveling out of post-COVID boom, right? And so a lot of people are kind of going like coming to a screeching halt a little bit with how fast they've grown. So I feel like we're in a really nice position because we've had meaningful growth, but it's not been like growth that we can't handle. And so I feel really grateful about the size that we're at now. And my goal is to absolutely continue to grow. And I think that will look, that could look a number of ways. As I said earlier, I'm clear in the vision and flexible about how I get there. So in the early days, I would have told you I'm going to grow via de novo units and I can get to 250 locations and I will be, in every major market in the US and beyond. And certainly I could do that. What I now realize is in order to do that well, and responsibly, it would take a long time. So I now am very open to that could look like acquisitions, it could look like roll-ups, it could look like franchise. Those things are all sort of on the table. Another thing we're really excited about is a shop and shop type of approach as well. We think there's great wisdom in partnering with existing brands outside of our space that have, large retail footprints and a book of business and a clientele that we could really tap into. It allows you to do it for a much more affordable, opening cost and things like that. So I think those are all ways that we see ourselves growing.
Great. I like your statement, clear in my vision, but then I'm
Flexible.
flexible in how I'll get there.
Yes.
I think that's
Yeah.
a true entrepreneur who has to realize plans do change along the way.
They sure do, as I'm sure you know. Yes.
Is there a brand or company in this space, maybe you already alluded to it, but that you admire and look up to? And
So many. I mean, one of the things I love about our category, and this is truly like something that I just get so much joy out of, is that because of the rigorous growth in the industry and what we all see as meaningful growth ahead. So not only are people getting these services, people are living longer, healthier lives than they ever have before. They want to look good for those lives. So they are getting these services well into their 70s and 80s and beyond, right? So we're seeing people living longer, getting these services more. We're also seeing a destigmatization around the sort of getting of these services, and people are not ashamed to admit anymore now that they get these treatments done. And so because of that sort of widening, and as you know, I mean, today's generation, they're all over social media saying, "Hey, I'm getting my lips done. I'm here getting my Botox," right? It's absolutely a very open and socially acceptable thing now. So because of that, the industry is growing hand over fist. We're also seeing new demographics coming to market. We're seeing a huge growth in male users, as an example. We're also seeing people start younger and preventatively. And so the industry, I mean, there's no lack of clientele. I heard a statistic recently that was like 63 million Americans have considered a non-invasive aesthetic treatment in the last 24 months. 10.2 million have received one.
Well,
So you're looking at a moat of 50 million plus people that are right there. So I think all of us in the space, especially on the multi-unit side, that are kind of approaching this in a similar way to what I'm doing, are saying there's room for all of us in the space. Now, certainly we want to win, and we all want to win, and so there's a healthy level of competition there. But like at the end of the day, we realize like there's room for all of us to play very successfully in the space. And because of that, there's a ton of collaboration that happens. Like while it is competitive, it's like we're all facing the same problems, the same challenges, the same, obstacles. And it just, I feel like at any given time, I could literally pick up the phone and call the founder of Laser Away, the founder of Skin Spirit. Like I could call these people and say, "Hey, I'm dealing with this. Can you help me with this?" And so I find that to be incredibly compelling. I hope to pay it forward. I hope I'm seen as somebody that people feel like they can reach out to, because we are all like facing the same stuff. And at the end of the day, there's a chance for all of us to win big. So
cool.
yeah, so I would say, I mentioned those two brands, Laser Away and Skin Spirit. Big fans of both of those brands and those founders. I think they've both done a tremendous job. I also love Vanessa Lee from The Things We Do. I think she's an incredible entrepreneur who's built her brand with intention and focus. And I also love what Skin Farm is doing. They're in sort of I think based in Nashville, and growing rapidly as well. So I think there's a lot of great brands in the space that
Great,
I'm
great.
yeah.
And is there a book or a person who has been a motivation for you, from where you've learned things which stand out?
I mean, I would say I learn all the time from different people. I wouldn't say there's one person that I've sort of focused on. I would also say, and this may be kind of a strange thing to say, is I I'm kind of obsessed with failures as well, because I always look at, and the word failure is a silly word. I think at the end of the day these are all learnings, but brands that have set out with a similar intention, whether it's my category or different categories, and it hasn't played out the way they've wanted, I'm kind of obsessed with looking at those things and saying, how can I avoid these same pitfalls? How can I, gosh, what this person went through, there has to be some silver lining for them, and maybe it's that I learned my lesson in a different way. So I'm a very positive person, and I'm like, how can I make sure that I make decisions that don't yield, or that get me where I'm going. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's a specific person or book that I would reference. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you also, I think I said, read or heard
Mhm.
somewhere you saying that, which I also believe, that every business is quite different and every journey is different. So it's like you have to find your own,
Yeah.
you can't just say that guy did it this way, so I will do it this way.
No, there is really, yeah, I wouldn't say there's like yeah, I mean no path is entirely linear. Like I think that you can learn from different things. I also think that way about advice, right? Because in the early days, of course, I was trying to figure this out, and I was hungry for information, and I would reach out to people that I admired or people that I liked something about what they were doing, ask them for advice. And then what happens is you get all this advice, and a lot of times the advice is either conflicting with other advice you're hearing or conflicting with your own instincts, and you're like, that doesn't feel right to me. And I would say at the end of the day, like, advice is an interesting thing. It's like you can get a lot of advice, but it's up to you to choose how you want to react to that advice. And I think the one thing I would say to anyone who's listening, who's thinking about starting a business or has it, it's like you know your business better than anyone else will ever know it. Even if you're just starting out, you have your brain wrapped around the vision. You've thought about it way more than anyone else has ever thought about it. So give yourself some credit for that. Like, you may not consider yourself an expert in the space, but you know what your idea is, and try to stay true to that. Like, try to do things that kind of keep you on that path of whatever that North Star is that you're chasing.
Actually, that I relate to that also, where even we are becoming a bigger company.
Yeah.
So we have a CFO, and so CFOs do stuff which I don't fully understand. But
Same.
then,
Yeah.
you know what? I was looking at your comment, which is you ask them questions because if they can
Yeah.
explain to you,
Yes.
maybe you know the business better than them, so you
Yes.
can actually contribute in the process versus assuming it'll be embarrassing to ask a question and
Right. And not that the answer, yeah. I mean, because a lot of the assumptions that they're going to make about your business may not be aligned with what you're assuming,
yeah.
and so yeah, you have to understand what's behind these assumptions they're making. Because if you don't, then you're kind of putting your business in someone else's hands.
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, it's good to always ask and
Yeah.
learn and
Don't be afraid to
don't be
sound.
afraid. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, what do you do from a personal well-being perspective to take care of your health?
Wow, yeah, that's hard. I laugh at the notion of balance, I must say. But I'm a single mom. I had a baby by myself. I was sort of one of those people during the pandemic where, I would say I forgot to date. I was 8 years, building my business and, didn't prioritize, meeting someone or finding a relationship at all. And found myself, in my very early 40s during the pandemic, in those deep, dark days of the pandemic, saying, well, what do I want out of life? I've been building my business for so long. I've always known I wanted to be a mother. And so I decided to go through the process on my own. And I have a little girl. She's 3.5. And she has become my reason, my why behind everything I do. And, certainly is, the best thing I've ever done. I would say, my second baby, because Alchemy 43 is my first baby, but, really has given me a renewed sense of what it is to play, what it is to sort of disconnect. Because as you probably know, I think you have kids as well, they don't let you
Yeah.
be distracted. Like, that is not an option. If she sees me with my phone and she's like, "No, mama," she pulls the phone out of my hand. So I do think it's been almost a tonic for me to be able to actually, because I don't know that I am capable of completely disconnecting or taking that, mental break you need to take. And she kind of forces me to. So
So that's nice because I think I also tell people well-being isn't just about going and working out or going on
right,
hikes.
taking a yoga
It's
class.
like, being with your daughter and spending quality time with
Yeah.
her is a part of well-being if that's what gets you into the zone of feeling good.
Absolutely, it's the best, and it's so centering and grounding, and I also just think it's fascinating how children play and how they're so present and in the moment. There's, like, no we're analyzing everything, we're constantly thinking about worst case scenario, best case, all the thing. It's like they are just in the moment, and
Yeah.
it's really cool to sort of live that way for
Helps
even a
us,
period of time.
helps us aspire to going
Yeah.
back to being like
Yes.
that. So,
Yes.
and so why should a consumer choose Alchemy 43?
Growth Diaries is brought to you by Zenoti, the software trusted by over 30,000 salons, spas, med spas, and fitness studios.
Well, I think, and I hope that this has been a takeaway from this conversation too, is that I think there's a lot of heart behind our brand. I think that we are, we exist to inspire confidence in the consumer. I think if you look at the reasons, and the things that sort of were the catalysts and drivers for making me want to start the business, I wanted to create a better experience around getting these treatments done. And that really was rooted in how the customer or the client or the patient feels when they interact with us. So I always said, like, the biggest thing I had a problem with was people would go in and see these, aesthetic practices or doctors or providers, and they would be told everything that was wrong with them that needed to be fixed. And I fundamentally believe that these treatments are elective. We're not curing cancer. They're not required. They're not therapeutic. They're a choice that the consumer is making. And so if you sort of realize that and you honor it and you say, hey, you don't need us, but if you want to sort of take care of yourself in this way, we're going to give you the best experience to do that. Like we're going to make you feel great. We're going to build the whole consultation around a feature on your face or a feature of your personality that really stands out, and we're going to sort of elaborate on that versus telling you this is broken, needs to be fixed, or you look bad and you need to look good. Like it's just not, I believe, the way to sort of create a true sense of well-being. So hopefully they choose us because they feel like they get great clinical outcomes, and most importantly, they get treated well, they get a great client experience, and it's consistent and reliable.
So Nicci, thanks a lot for making the time. It's been wonderful hearing your story and how thoughtful you've been about building a national brand. And I look forward to seeing this to be in multiple cities and at a different scale soon. So
Thank you for having me.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
Growth Diaries is brought to you by Zenoti.